Making big decisions, it's pretty stressful. I'm just wondering, in terms of you guys along the panel, what's the hardest decision you've ever had to make in your life? Rob?
Oh, yeah, probably one about 4 or 5 years ago. I was working for a media agency, and anyway, the question really came up as a really ethical one for me. There were some things going on at a probably senior executive level that really just, I guess, bugged my values and my ethics. And I really had to sit at home and think, well, you're being well paid, you've got a family, you've got a lifestyle. But at the end of the day, do you want to kind of be remembered or do this kind of thing? And you've got to, as I say, look in the mirror sometimes and see what's looking back at you. And I resigned from that particular piece of business. But it was a tough decision, especially when family becomes involved.
Did you physically feel relieved once you'd made the decision?
Yeah, I did. I felt a lot better about having made that decision. And even though there's tough steps to kind of rebuild your career at that point, you feel a lot better going forward and resting easy. And as it turned out, a year or so later, things did get pretty ugly for those guys, and I was well relieved to be well clear of it and have gone before the proverbial hit the fan.
I think it's really important to really think hard about those sorts of decisions and not arrive at them lightly. But as Rob clearly hasn't, and it's to actually think about, well, is this going to get better in the next 6 months? And if it's not, then really start to make the change.
Well, on this week's program, my top 8 was how to make an effective decision. What we thought we'd do is go out, talk to people on the street and find out about some of the hardest decisions they've had to make and how they've gone about doing it. And when we come back, we'll have a talk about what we think about the process they went through.
Whether I should phone home to my wife that I'm going to be late or not.
I work in retail, I don't get very difficult decisions. To leave my job.
Whether to leave or not.
To decline a loan.
Probably the hardest decision was working with a group making decisions regarding redundancies for people.
Whether or not to sack someone.
Ham on rye or tuna.
Heads was bring home, or tails was go out with the boys.
There was about 10 of us in our team, and just find out what everybody thinks, and then we kind of all generally make the decision together.
Just basing it on what I'm getting paid and that kind of thing, and whether it's worth staying or not.
Weighed up options, thought about possibilities, like where I could go from where I was.
Just evaluated the whole situation, and I just had to bite the bullet and do it.
There's a lot of advantage in consensus, and it helps with developing teamwork and that sort of thing.
The best decisions are usually made by an individual.
Yeah, I think it is. It's to talk about it with other people.
Yes, certainly. Yep, you've always got to draw on your superiors, your bosses.
No, because their whole feelings towards the situation will be different to yours.
So Narelle, getting other people involved in the decision-making process, does that make any sense?
Well, I think if other people are affected by the decision, clearly you need to get them involved. But I'm actually interested in the process itself that some of these people went through. I see 3 components to making a good decision. One is the value bit, which Rob talked about really nicely. Is the decision consistent with your values? The other is the rational one, the pros and cons, and add it all up, and some of your people talked about that. But the final one is the feelings one. I mean, does the decision you're about to make, how does it feel in your gut? Is it the right way to go? And I think you've got to think about all those components when you're making a decision.
The whole thing about emotional intelligence comes into it. And I think they're those really critical decisions where you almost do, and you can talk to a lot of people, and I think if you're talking to people, do it over a period of time. And in my circumstance, I did that with a few trusted advisors and kind of mentors who knew me, and it was over a period of probably 3 months I talked with them, and they were able to sit back a little bit and go, it's not getting that good, I really start thinking about it. So you start, even though at the end of the day, you have to make that decision, and really it's a gut decision.
Did you have a range of views there, Rob, amongst the people you spoke with?
There was some range of views because they're not as close as you said. You are really the one in it, but when they're all sort of starting to point in the same direction, and as you have, you get a feeling where you should be going.
Libby, got a lot of rational analysis and going through the process going on here. What about when you've made big decisions or important decisions? Is that what you do?
I was thinking, I do, but I sort of approach decision. That's the type of the person I am and the way I work, is I make decisions quite quickly and I weigh things up. So looking back, some of the hardest decisions I've ever made are personal decisions. Listening to what the people said on the tape, one of the things that I find now in workplaces is that most people are making the decision to actually leave work without having another job. So there's a shift in, an emotive thing about, well, I'm really not happy here, I'm going to go. I'm not prepared to just stay in here. And that used to be the biggest taboo thing. Don't ever leave unless you've got another job.
And I think it's a good thing now that people have got enough confidence to be able to take that step out
Yep.
and and be prepared to take the step over the abyss.
Yeah.
Some people take it too far and they just bounce around forever.
Yeah.
But just as Rob touched on, you've got to be able to have the confidence to just step out if the current situation is not right.
Well, if the situation is that you're not quite sure where you're going, but you know damn sure where you don't want to be.
That's right.
Exactly.
Then I think you've got to make that decision to say, well, if I don't want to be there, then anywhere is. Let me just take a break from this, and if you sort of take that 3 months of that sort of garden leave or something like that.
I did empathise with that guy.
Garden
Who said
variety
that. I did empathise with the guy who said the hardest decision is when he rings his wife up each night to tell her he's going to be late.
Look, I know exactly what you mean about that because my wife's expecting me in about 25 minutes and I don't see myself making it. But one thing I just say about decision making before we move on to the next segment, and that is that once you've made it, you should go ahead and implement it straight away. I heard the CEO of BHP say once that when you make a decision to cut off the tail of a dog, you don't do it 1 centimetre at a time.